Commander Thyxthala adjusted her biomechanical breathing apparatus as she studied the holographic display floating before her command throne. The mercenary vessel Bloodclaw drifted silently through the void between star systems, its hull scarred from countless battles across the galaxy. Around her, the bridge hummed with activity as her crew prepared for what should have been another routine extermination contract. The Krillian Empire had hired her mercenary company, the Void Reapers, to eliminate a small colony world that had refused to pay their protection taxes. It was simple work, the kind that had made Zwaxthala wealthy and feared across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Her reputation was built on efficiency and brutality. No world had ever survived her attention. Target world designation Kepler. 442b, coming in a sensor range. Commander, announced her tactical officer, a 4-armed Theshan whose cybernetic implants glowed blue in the dim light of the bridge. Initial scans show a population of approximately 50 million spread across 7 continents. Zwaxthala's mandibles clicked together in what passed for a smile among her species. 50 million was a respectable number for a colony world. The Krillians were paying her based on population count, so this would be quite profitable. Her company specialized in what the galaxy euphemistically called orbital cleansing, the systematic destruction of planetary surfaces from space using kinetic bombardment and plasma weapons. Defensive capabilities? She asked, though she expected the usual answer. Most colony worlds had minimal defenses, perhaps a few outdated patrol ships or aging orbital platforms. The tactical officer's expression grew puzzled. That's strange, Commander. I'm detecting multiple defense platforms in orbit, but their energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. The technology appears to be completely foreign to known galactic civilizations. Zwaxthala leaned forward, her interest piqued. In her 3 decades of mercenary work, she had encountered nearly every known technology in the galaxy. The major powers, the Krillian Empire, the Theshan Confederacy, the Vorthan Republic, all used variants of the same basic principles. Plasma weapons, gravitic shields, quantum drives. There were subtle differences in implementation, but the underlying physics remained constant. "Show me," she commanded. The holographic display shifted to show a 3-dimensional representation of Kepler, 442b, and its orbital space. The planet itself was a beautiful blue-green marble, clearly hospitable to carbon-based life. But surrounding it was a network of structures that made Zwaxthala's breathing apparatus hiss in surprise. Massive orbital platforms hung in precise formation around the planet, each one larger than her entire fleet. They were connected by streams of energy that created geometric patterns in space, forming what appeared to be a protective web around the world. Smaller vessels moved between the platforms in orderly formations, their designs completely unfamiliar. "Analysis of the defending fleet?" she asked, though her confidence was beginning to waver. Approximately 300 vessels of unknown design, ranging from what appear to be fighter craft to massive dreadnoughts that dwarf our heaviest ships. "Commander, some of these vessels are registering mass readings that should be impossible for their size. Either our sensors are malfunctioning, or they're using some form of technology that compresses matter beyond known limits." Zwaxthala stood from her command throne, her tall, insectoid form casting a shadow across the bridge. The Void Reapers had earned their reputation through careful target selection and overwhelming firepower. They attacked worlds that couldn't defend themselves effectively, not fortress systems that could fight back. But the Krillians had paid half the fee up front, and her reputation would suffer if she withdrew without even attempting the mission. "Identify the governing species," she ordered. "I want to know who we're dealing with." The communications officer, a pale-skinned humanoid from the Outer Rim, worked at her console for several minutes before responding. "Commander, I'm intercepting multiple communication channels from the planet's surface and orbital facilities. The primary language appears to be something called English, and there are references to entities called humans. Humans." Zwaxthala had never heard the name before, which was unusual. Her company maintained extensive databases on all known spacefaring species. Are they in our xenological records? Negative, Commander. No species by that designation exists in any galactic database I can access. According to the communications I'm monitoring, this appears to be their homeworld, designated Earth in their language. Zyxthala felt a chill run through her exoskeleton. An unknown species with advanced defensive technology guarding their homeworld. This was not the simple colony extermination she had been hired to perform. The Krillians had either been deceived about the nature of their target, or they had deliberately withheld crucial information. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, "I'm detecting incoming transmission from the planet. They're hailing us directly." "Put it through," the Zyxthala commanded, curious to learn more about these mysterious humans. The main display shimmered and resolved into the image of a bipedal creature unlike anything she had seen before. It had pale pink skin, short fur only on the top of its head, and two forward-facing eyes that seemed to look directly at her with unsettling intelligence. It wore what appeared to be a formal uniform of some kind, dark blue with metal insignia. "Greetings, unknown vessels," the creature said in a clear, measured voice that the translation software rendered in Standard Galactic. "This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Force. You are approaching a protected world in apparent hostile formation. State your intentions immediately." Zyxthala activated her own communication systems, allowing the human to see her. She had found that her appearance often intimidated other species, which could be useful in negotiations. "I am Commander Zyxthala of the mercenary company known as the Void Reapers," she replied, her translated voice carrying the authoritative tone that had served her well in previous encounters. "We have been contracted to perform orbital cleansing of this world. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." The human's expression changed, becoming harder somehow. Zyxthala realized that her intimidation tactic had failed completely. If anything, the human seemed to become more determined. "Commander, you appear to be under a severe misapprehension," Admiral Chun replied calmly. "This is Earth, humanity's homeworld and the heart of the Terran Federation. It is protected by the most advanced defense network in known space. I strongly advise you to reconsider your course of action." Zyxthala's mandibles clicked in amusement. Every species claimed to have the most advanced technology when faced with superior firepower. She had heard similar boasts from dozens of worlds before reducing them to molten slag. "Human," she said, allowing contempt to color her voice, "you are clearly unaware of who you are dealing with. The Void Reapers have never failed to complete a contract. We have destroyed over 200 worlds in the past 30 standard years. Your technology may be unknown to us, but it cannot protect you from overwhelming force." Admiral Chun was quiet for a moment, and Zyxthala thought she saw something like sadness pass across the human's alien features. "Commander, I need you to understand something," the Admiral said finally. "Earth is not some isolated colony world. We are the center of an interstellar civilization that spans over 1,000 star systems. The ships you see in our orbital space represent only a small fraction of our defensive capabilities. More importantly, humanity has survived and thrived by learning from every enemy we've ever faced. We have studied the tactics and technology of every major power in this galaxy." The transmission paused, and Zyxthala felt a growing unease. The human's confidence seemed genuine, not the desperate bluffing she was accustomed to hearing from doomed worlds. "We know about the Void Reapers, Commander Zyxthala," Admiral Chun continued. "We know about your tactics, your ship configurations, your weapon systems. We've been monitoring galactic mercenary activities for over 50 years. We know about your success rate, your preferred targeting systems, and your standard operational procedures. What you don't know is that we've been preparing for this day." The display split to show multiple camera angles from around Earth's orbital space. Zyxthala watched in growing alarm as the defensive platforms began to shift and reconfigure. The energy streams connecting them pulsed brighter and additional structures began emerging from what she had assumed were static installations. "You see, Commander," Admiral Chun explained, "humans have a particular talent for learning from observation. Every time you destroyed a world, we've studied the recordings. Every time you've used a particular tactic, we've developed countermeasures. You've spent decades teaching us how to defeat you." ZYX-Thala's tactical officer spoke up urgently. "Commander, the defensive platforms are charging what appear to be weapon systems. Energy levels are rising beyond anything in our threat assessment protocols." The mercenary commander felt her confidence cracking. In all her years of conquest, she had never encountered a situation like this. The humans spoke with the certainty of those who held overwhelming advantage, not the desperation of the doomed. Furthermore, Admiral Chun continued, "Humanity extends protection to worlds throughout this region of space. The planet you were hired to attack isn't just defended by Earth's forces. It's defended by the entire Terran Federation. You're not facing a single world, Commander. You're facing an interstellar civilization that has been preparing for exactly this scenario." The communications channel remained open as ZYX-Thala processed this information. If the humans were telling the truth, then the Krillians had sent her against a major galactic power, not a helpless colony world. But that made no sense. The Krillians were cautious and well-informed. They wouldn't have made such a massive intelligence failure. "I don't believe you," ZYX-Thala said finally. "The galactic databases contain no information about any Terran Federation. You're bluffing to protect a single world." Admiral Chin's expression grew almost pitying. "Commander, humanity discovered faster-than-light travel only 60 years ago. We expanded rapidly and established colonies throughout this region before making contact with the major galactic powers. We've been observing galactic civilization for decades while remaining largely hidden. We prefer to learn and prepare rather than announce ourselves prematurely." The display changed again, showing star charts that made ZYX-Thala's breathing apparatus wheeze in shock. Hundreds of star systems were marked with human symbols, connected by trade routes and defended by fleet positions. If this was accurate, humanity controlled a significant portion of this galactic spiral arm. "The world you were hired to attack is Kepler 442b, designated New Geneva in our records," Admiral Chin explained. "It's one of our oldest and most important agricultural colonies, producing food for 17 other worlds. It houses over 50 million human citizens and is under the direct protection of the Terran Federation Navy." ZYX-Thala realized that her entire strategic situation had just changed. This wasn't a simple extermination mission anymore. If the humans were telling the truth, she was potentially starting a war between the Void Reapers and a major interstellar power. Such conflicts never ended well for mercenary companies. "What do you propose?" she asked carefully, her aggressive posture beginning to shift toward negotiation. "Leave," Admiral Chin said simply. "Turn your fleet around, return to wherever you came from, and report to your employers that Earth and its colonies are under protection that extends far beyond their capability to overcome. Tell them that humanity is not some helpless species to be extorted or destroyed." ZYX-Thala considered her options. Withdrawal would damage her reputation, but destruction of her entire fleet would end her career permanently. The human defensive systems were unlike anything she had encountered, and their claims about the size of their civilization were either elaborate deceptions or genuinely threatening intelligence. "And if we choose to complete our contract?" she asked. Admiral Chin's expression became cold and implacable. "Then you'll discover firsthand why humanity survived everything our homeworld could throw at us, and why we've thrived among the stars despite being relative newcomers to galactic civilization. Commander, you've built your reputation on overwhelming isolated targets. But humans have built our entire civilization on surviving overwhelming odds." The transmission ended, leaving ZYX-Thala alone with her crew and a decision that would define the rest of her career. Around her, the bridge had fallen silent as her officers absorbed what they had just witnessed. For the first time in decades, The Void Reapers faced an enemy that seemed confident in their ability to not just survive, but to win. The mercenary commander looked at the tactical display, showing the human defensive network. Every instinct she had developed over 3 decades of successful campaigns was telling her that this was different. This was dangerous in ways that simple firepower couldn't overcome. But her reputation, her contracts, and her livelihood all depended on completing the mission she had accepted. The decision would have to be made soon. The humans were waiting for her response, and her fleet was already committed to the attack approach. Whatever happened in the next few hours would determine not just the fate of her mercenary company, but potentially the balance of power in this entire region of the galaxy. Commander Zoyaxthala stood frozen at her command position for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The weight of the decision before her pressed down like the gravity of a massive planet. Around her bridge, the crew waited in tense silence for orders that could determine whether they lived or died. Commander, her second-in-command, reptilian Vorthan named Kess, spoke quietly. The fleet is waiting for attack orders. Our formation is optimal for orbital bombardment, and all weapons are charged and ready. ZYXThala's compound eyes studied the tactical display one more time. The human defensive network looked even more formidable now that she understood what she was seeing. Those weren't just random defensive platforms. They formed an interconnected web of protection that covered every possible approach to the planet. The energy readings her sensors were detecting suggested weapon systems far beyond anything in her experience. But backing down now would destroy everything she had built. The Void Reapers had a perfect success record, and that reputation was worth more than individual contracts. Other employers would lose confidence if word spread that she had been intimidated by unknown aliens defending a single world. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted her thoughts. "We're receiving multiple incoming transmissions. The Krillian Empire wants a status report, and several other mercenary companies are requesting real-time tactical data. Word about the human encounter is already spreading through mercenary networks." That decided it. Too many eyes were watching for her to simply withdraw without a fight. Her reputation would survive a tactical defeat better than it would survive being labeled as cowardly. At least if she attacked, other mercenaries would respect her willingness to engage unknown threats. "Battle stations," she commanded, her voice carrying throughout the ship via the internal communication system. "All vessels, prepare for orbital bombardment. Target the primary population centers first, then move to industrial installations." The bridge erupted into controlled activity as her crew executed the familiar pre-combat routine. Weapon systems came online with their characteristic whining charge cycles. Shield generators hummed to full power. Tactical displays updated with targeting information and firing solutions. "Commander," her weapons officer reported, "all kinetic bombardment systems are ready. Plasma lance arrays are charged to maximum capacity. The fleet reports ready for coordinated strike." ZYXThala opened a communication channel to Admiral Chun. She wanted to give the humans one final opportunity to surrender, partly out of professional courtesy and partly because she was genuinely curious about their technology. "Admiral," she said when the human's face appeared on her display, "I am prepared to honor my contract. This is your final opportunity to surrender unconditionally. Order your defensive forces to stand down and allow us to complete our mission. In exchange, I will ensure that your personal ships are allowed to evacuate before bombardment begins." Admiral Chen's expression remained calm and determined. Behind her, ZYXThala could see other humans working at what appeared to be command stations. None of them seemed panicked or desperate. If anything, they appeared focused and professional, like experienced military personnel preparing for a battle they expected to win. "Commander ZYXThala," Admiral Chen replied, "I appreciate the offer, but I must decline. Earth Defense Command has protocols for dealing with threats to human worlds, and those protocols don't include surrender to mercenary raiders." The human admiral paused and seemed to consider her next words carefully. "However," I want you to understand something before you proceed. Humanity has faced extinction multiple times in our history. We've survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, plagues, and wars that consumed our entire homeworld. We've learned that survival requires not just the willingness to fight, but the intelligence to fight effectively. When you attack our world, you're not just facing our weapons. You're facing the accumulated knowledge and determination of a species that has never accepted defeat. ZYXThala felt her mandibles click together in irritation. Every doomed species made similar speeches before their destruction. The words changed, but the meaning was always the same: desperate bluffing in the face of overwhelming force. Begin bombardment, she ordered her weapons officer. Full spread, maximum yield. Her fleet of 30 vessels opened fire simultaneously. Kinetic slugs accelerated to significant fractions of light speed streaked toward the human orbital platforms. Plasma lances stabbed through space like spears of contained starfire. The combined firepower was sufficient to devastate any planetary defense network she had ever encountered. What happened next would be remembered in mercenary circles for decades to come. The human defensive platforms didn't simply absorb or deflect the incoming fire. Instead, they seemed to analyze each projectile and energy beam individually before responding with precisely calibrated countermeasures. Kinetic slugs were intercepted by energy fields that didn't just stop them, but seemed to absorb their momentum and redirect it. Plasma beams were met by some kind of field that dissipated their energy harmlessly into space. Impossible, whispered her tactical officer. Commander, they're not just blocking our attacks. They're learning from them. Each subsequent shot is being countered more efficiently than the previous one. But the human response went beyond mere defense. As the Void Reaper bombardment continued, the orbital platforms began to reconfigure themselves. Energy streams connecting the platforms pulsed brighter, and new weapon systems emerged from what had appeared to be purely defensive installations. Incoming fire, the sensor operator called out suddenly. Multiple energy signatures inbound from the human platforms. ZYXThala watched in fascination and growing alarm as beams of coherent energy, unlike anything in her experience, struck her fleet. These weren't simple plasma weapons or particle beams. They seemed to pass through her ship's shields as if the defensive screens didn't exist, causing massive internal damage without even touching the hull armor. The mercenary vessel Shadow Strike simply stopped functioning. Its engines went dark, its weapons powered down, and its life support systems failed simultaneously. The ship remained physically intact, but every system aboard had been disabled by a single hit from the human weapons. They're not trying to destroy us, Kess observed with growing horror. They're capturing our ships intact. All vessels, evasive maneuvers. ZYXThala ordered, but it was too late. The human targeting systems tracked her ships with impossible precision, and their weapons fired with the regularity of a clock mechanism. One by one, her fleet was being systematically disabled. The Bloodclaw shuddered as one of the mysterious beams passed through their shields and struck the engineering section. Immediately, half their systems began shutting down in sequence. The lights dimmed, the artificial gravity fluctuated, and the weapon systems went offline. Commander! The engineering chief's voice crackled through the communication system. They've done something to our power distribution network. It's like they understand our technology better than we do. They're not destroying components. They're just telling them to stop working. Admiral Chen's voice came through the still-functioning communication system. Commander ZYXThala, you now have approximately 15 minutes before your life support systems fail completely. I'm prepared to restore your ship's functions if you're willing to discuss terms. ZYXThala looked around her darkening bridge. Her crew was professional enough to maintain their positions, but she could see the fear in their eyes. In 30 years of mercenary operations, she had never encountered anything like this. The humans weren't just defending themselves, they were demonstrating technological superiority that made her fleet look like primitive savages attacking a modern civilization. What terms? she asked, her pride warring with her survival instincts. Immediate withdrawal from this system and all human protected space, Admiral Chen replied. Return to your employers with a clear message that humanity and our allies are not acceptable targets for mercenary operations. In exchange, your fleet will be allowed to leave intact and unharmed. ZYX Thala considered her options, which seemed to be rapidly diminishing. Her weapons were useless against human defenses, her ships were being disabled at will, and her crew was facing death from life support failure. But, more than that, she was beginning to understand that she had made a fundamental miscalculation about the nature of her target. You're not just defending a single world, she said, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. You've been prepared for this exact scenario. Admiral Chen nodded. Commander, humanity has been observing galactic civilization for over 50 years. We've studied every major power, every military technology, every tactical doctrine. We've seen what the Krillians do to worlds that resist them, and we've watched mercenary companies like yours enable their expansion. We've been preparing for the day when someone would test our defenses. The human admiral's image was joined by additional displays showing other human worlds throughout the region. Each one was protected by similar defensive networks, and each one had fleets of ships ready to respond to threats. The Krillian Empire hired you to attack what they thought was an isolated human colony, Admiral Chen explained. What they didn't know is that there are no isolated human colonies. Every world we've established is connected to and protected by our entire civilization. Attack one, and you attack all of us. ZYX Thala felt her breathing apparatus hiss as the implications became clear. The Krillians hadn't made an intelligence mistake. They had been deliberately deceived by the humans. Her mercenary company had been used as an unwitting probe to test human defenses and reveal their capabilities to galactic civilization. You wanted us to attack, she said with growing understanding. This was all planned. Not wanted, Admiral Chen corrected. Anticipated. We knew that eventually someone would test our defenses. We preferred that it be a mercenary company rather than a full military invasion from a major power. This way, the demonstration of our capabilities reaches the right audiences without requiring a larger conflict. The tactical implications were staggering. If humanity could disable her entire fleet without destroying it, they could probably do the same to any attacking force. But, more than that, they had been planning this encounter for decades, preparing not just their technology, but their diplomatic strategy as well. Sir, her communications officer reported, I'm detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of the system. Multiple large vessels dropping out of hyperspace. The tactical display updated to show new contacts approaching from various directions. These weren't the defensive platforms that had disabled her fleet. These were mobile warships, each one larger than anything in her mercenary fleet. Those are elements of the Third Fleet, Admiral Chen explained calmly. They were conducting exercises in nearby systems when you arrived. I thought you might appreciate seeing a small sample of our mobile forces before you make your final decision about withdrawal. ZYX Thala counted the approaching human vessels. There were over 100 of them, ranging from ships the size of her own flagship to massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything she had ever seen. If the defensive platforms were representative of human technology, these mobile fleets would be unstoppable in open battle. How many worlds? She asked quietly. How large is your civilization, really? Large enough, Admiral Chen replied diplomatically, and growing larger every year. Humanity is expanding throughout this region of the galaxy, establishing colonies and making contact with other species. We're not interested in conquest, but we will defend what's ours. The life support systems on ZYX Thala's ship were beginning to fail noticeably. The air was getting thinner, and the temperature was dropping. Her crew was maintaining their positions, but she could see that some of them were already having difficulty breathing. Commander, Kess said quietly, we need to make a decision soon. The crew is beginning to suffer from oxygen deprivation. ZYX Thala looked at the tactical display one more time. Her disabled fleet hung helpless in space while human warships approached from multiple directions. Her weapons were useless, her defenses had been bypassed effortlessly, and her very survival depended on the mercy of an alien species she had come to exterminate. But more than that, she was beginning to understand that this encounter would change the balance of power in the galaxy. Humanity had just demonstrated that they possessed both the technology and the organization to challenge any of the major powers. The carefully maintained equilibrium between the Krillians, Thessians, and Vorthans was about to become far more complex. "Admiral Chun," she said finally, "I accept your terms. The Void Reapers withdraw from this system and will not return to human space. But I need you to understand that this encounter will have consequences far beyond our small conflict. The major powers will want to know about your capabilities, and they may not be as willing as I am to simply withdraw when tested." Admiral Chen's expression became thoughtful. "Commander, that's exactly what we're counting on." The journey back to Krillian space felt like the longest voyage of ZYX Thala's career. Her fleet limped through hyperspace with minimal systems, their ship's functions restored just enough by the humans to ensure survival, but not comfort. The crew was subdued and shaken, still processing what they had witnessed at Earth. What should have been a routine extermination mission had instead become a demonstration of technological superiority that challenged everything they thought they knew about galactic power structures. ZYX Thala spent most of the journey reviewing the sensor recordings of their encounter with human forces. Every time she analyzed the data, she reached the same disturbing conclusion. The humans hadn't just defended themselves successfully, they had done so while holding back the vast majority of their capabilities. The ease with which they had disabled her entire fleet suggested that they could have destroyed it just as easily if they had chosen to do so. "Commander," Kess approached her as she studied the tactical displays in her private quarters. "We'll be arriving at the Krillian rendezvous point in 6 hours. How do you plan to explain our situation to our employers?" It was a valid question that had been troubling ZYX Thala throughout their retreat. The Krillian Empire didn't accept failure easily, and they had paid a substantial advance fee for services that hadn't been delivered. Worse, they would expect detailed intelligence about the target they had failed to eliminate. "We tell them the truth," she said finally. "We encountered a previously unknown major power with defensive capabilities that exceed anything in our databases. We recommend that the Krillians reconsider their expansion plans in that region of space." Kess clicked his tongue against his teeth in the Vorthan expression of skepticism. "The Krillians don't like inconvenient truths, Commander. They prefer to hear that obstacles can be overcome with sufficient force. What if they decide we simply didn't try hard enough?" ZYX Thala had considered that possibility. The Krillian Empire was built on the principle that any resistance could be crushed if enough pressure was applied. Their expansion throughout the galaxy had been based on identifying weak points and exploiting them mercilessly. The concept of an opponent that couldn't be defeated through superior firepower was foreign to their strategic thinking. "Then, they'll send a larger force to test human defenses themselves," she replied. "And they'll learn the same lesson we did, but at much greater cost." The communications system chimed, indicating an incoming transmission. ZYX Thala accepted the call, and the holographic image of General Thraktar appeared in her quarters. The Krillian military leader was a massive, armored creature whose species had evolved from predatory pack hunters. His scarred carapace and multiple weapon implants made him an intimidating figure even through a holographic projection. "Commander Vexthala," General Thraktar said without preamble, "my sensors show your fleet approaching our position, but I detect significant damage to your vessels and no evidence of successful mission completion." "Explain." ZYX Thala straightened in her chair, adopting the formal posture required when addressing Krillian military leadership. "General, we encountered unexpected resistance at the target world. The colony is protected by a previously unknown species with advanced defensive technology. Our conventional bombardment tactics proved ineffective against their capabilities. General Thraktar's multiple eyes focused on her with predatory intensity. Are you telling me that the mighty Void Reapers were defeated by primitive colonists? Sir, they are not primitive colonists, Zawaixthala replied carefully. Our analysis indicates they are a major spacefaring civilization that has been operating in that region for decades without making contact with the galactic community. They possess technology that exceeds our ability to counter, and they demonstrated the capability to disable our entire fleet without destroying it. The Krillian general was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Zawaixthala could see calculations running behind his eyes as he considered the strategic implications of her report. Impossible, he said finally. Our intelligence networks monitor all significant galactic powers. No new major civilization could emerge without our knowledge. Zawaixthala activated her own holographic display, showing the recordings of human ships and defensive installations. General, with respect, they didn't emerge. They've been there the entire time, building their civilization while remaining hidden from galactic attention. They call themselves humans, and their technology is unlike anything in our databases. General Thraktar studied the images with growing interest. As a military commander, he could recognize the significance of what he was seeing even if he didn't understand the technology involved. Show me their weapons capabilities, he commanded. Zawaixthala replayed the sensor recordings of the battle, highlighting the moments when human weapons had disabled her ships. She watched General Thraktar's expression change from skepticism to concern as he absorbed the implications of what the recordings revealed. They bypassed your shield systems entirely, he observed, and they disabled your vessels without causing structural damage. This suggests weapon systems that target ship systems directly rather than relying on kinetic or energy damage. Yes, sir, Zawaixthala confirmed. Furthermore, they demonstrated perfect tactical coordination between hundreds of defensive platforms and mobile units. Their command and control systems appear to be far more sophisticated than our own. General Thraktar was quiet for several minutes, studying the recordings and considering their implications. Zawaixthala waited patiently, understanding that the Krillian general was processing information that would fundamentally alter his strategic assessments. Were there territorial claims? He asked finally. Unknown in detail, sir, but they indicated that they control over 1,000 star systems in that region. They also stated that the world we were contracted to attack is under their direct protection, along with multiple other colonies in nearby systems. The implications were staggering. If the humans controlled 1,000 star systems, they represented a major power comparable to the Krillian Empire itself. Such a civilization couldn't be simply swept aside with conventional military force. Did they make any demands or threats regarding future Krillian expansion? General Thraktar asked. Zawaixthala chose her words carefully. They indicated that they consider their territory to be under their protection and that they will respond to future threats accordingly. They didn't make specific threats against the Krillian Empire, but they made it clear that they are prepared to defend their interests. General Thraktar deactivated the holographic display and focused his attention entirely on Zawaixthala. She could see the calculations running behind his eyes as he processed the strategic implications of her report. Commander, you will accompany my staff to the Imperial capital for detailed debriefing. The High Command will want to analyze every aspect of your encounter with these humans. Your sensor recordings and tactical analysis may prevent a much larger conflict. The transmission ended, leaving Zawaixthala alone with her thoughts. She realized that her failed mission might have far greater consequences than she had originally understood. The Krillian Empire would now be forced to acknowledge the existence of a major power in a region they had considered open for expansion. Depending on how they responded to that knowledge, her encounter with humanity could be the beginning of either a new diplomatic relationship or a much larger war. 6 hours later, her damaged fleet docked at the massive Krillian military station that served as General Thraktar's headquarters. The station was a monument to Krillian engineering philosophy, massive, heavily armed, and designed to project overwhelming force. Compared to the elegant efficiency of human orbital platforms, it seemed crude and wasteful. Zawixthala and her senior officers were escorted through the station's corridors by Krillian security forces. She noticed that their escort seemed unusually formal and respectful, treating them more like important witnesses than failed mercenaries. Word of their encounter had obviously spread through the Krillian command structure, and the implications were being taken seriously at the highest levels. The debriefing room was a stark military chamber equipped with holographic projectors and analysis equipment. General Fraktar was waiting for them, accompanied by several other high-ranking Krillian officers whose insignia indicated roles in intelligence and strategic planning. Commander Vexthala, General Fraktar began, what you witnessed may represent the most significant shift in galactic power dynamics in the past century. We need to understand every detail of your encounter with these humans. For the next 8 hours, Zawixthala and her officers provided exhaustive testimony about their mission. Every sensor reading was analyzed, every tactical decision was examined, and every word of their communications with Admiral Chun was scrutinized for hidden meanings. The Krillian intelligence officers asked detailed questions about human technology, tactics, and apparent strategic objectives. What emerged from the debriefing was a picture that troubled the Krillian leadership deeply. Humanity appeared to represent a major spacefaring civilization that had remained hidden while building substantial military capabilities. Their technology was clearly advanced beyond current galactic standards, and their territorial claims encompassed a significant portion of what the Krillians had considered open space. The strategic implications are clear, General Fraktar concluded. We are dealing with a peer competitor, not a minor colonial power. Any expansion into human-claimed territory would require full military commitment and acceptance of significant casualties. One of the intelligence officers leaned forward. General, there's another consideration. If humans have been observing galactic civilization for decades without revealing themselves, they may know far more about our capabilities than we know about theirs. This encounter may have been as much an intelligence-gathering operation for them as it was a defensive action. Zawixthala realized that the intelligence officer had identified something that had been bothering her throughout the journey home. The humans had been remarkably well-informed about her company's tactics and reputation. Admiral Chun had spoken about humanity studying mercenary operations for years, learning from each encounter to develop countermeasures. Sir, she interjected, Admiral Chun specifically mentioned that they had been monitoring galactic mercenary activities for over 50 years. She indicated that they had studied our tactics and developed specific countermeasures. It's possible that our encounter was part of a planned revelation of human capabilities to the galactic community. General Fraktar's expression became thoughtful. An announcement of their presence designed to discourage future aggression while demonstrating their defensive capabilities. It would be an effective strategy for a civilization that prefers to avoid conflict while establishing their territorial claims. The debriefing continued for several more hours, with Krillian analysts extracting every possible detail from the sensor recordings and tactical data. By the time it was concluded, Zawixthala was exhausted, but confident that she had provided the Krillian Empire with all the information they needed to make informed decisions about humanity. As the formal session ended, General Fraktar approached her privately. Commander, your honesty and thoroughness may have prevented a catastrophic miscalculation on our part. The High Command will need to completely reassess our expansion strategies in light of this new information. Zawixthala nodded, understanding the magnitude of what her failed mission had revealed. General, if I may offer a suggestion based on my experience, humanity demonstrated both the capability and the restraint of a mature civilization. They disabled our fleet without destroying it, and they offered terms for withdrawal rather than demanding unconditional surrender. These are not the actions of an aggressive expansionist power. General Fraktar considered her words carefully. You believe they could be negotiated with rather than conquered? Sir, I believe they're prepared for both possibilities, but they prefer diplomatic solutions to military ones. Admiral Chun made it clear that humanity will defend their territory, but she also indicated that they are not interested in conquest. A negotiated settlement of territorial boundaries might be possible. As Ziwa left the debriefing room, she reflected on how dramatically her perspective had changed. 3 days ago, she had been a successful mercenary commander confident in the superiority of conventional galactic military technology. Now, she understood that the galaxy was far more complex and dangerous than she had realized, and that humanity represented a new factor that would reshape interstellar politics for decades to come. 3 months after her encounter with humanity, Commander Zaxthala found herself in an unprecedented situation. Instead of planning her next mercenary operation, she was sitting in a conference room aboard a neutral space station, serving as an advisor to a joint diplomatic mission between the Krillian Empire and the newly revealed Terran Federation. The galaxy had changed dramatically in the wake of her failed mission, and she had inadvertently become one of the most important witnesses to humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage. The space station neutral ground orbited a barren world in unclaimed territory, equally distant from Krillian, Theshan, Vorthan, and human space. It had been hastily constructed as a meeting place for what were being called the most important diplomatic negotiations in galactic history. The revelation of humanity's existence and capabilities had sent shockwaves through every major civilization, forcing a complete reassessment of territorial claims and strategic alliances. Sitting across from her at the conference table was Admiral Sarah Chun, the same human officer who had convinced her to withdraw from Earth rather than face destruction. The Admiral looked exactly as she had 3 months ago, calm and professional, but Ziwa now understood that she was likely one of the most dangerous military commanders in the galaxy. Commander Ziwa, Admiral Chen said as the formal session began, I want to thank you for your role in preventing what could have been a much larger conflict. Your decision to withdraw and report accurately about our capabilities has allowed us to enter into these negotiations from a position of mutual respect rather than active hostility. General Thraktar, representing the Krillian Empire, shifted uncomfortably in his specially designed chair. The past 3 months had been difficult for Krillian leadership as they absorbed the implications of humanity's existence. Their expansion plans for an entire spiral arm of the galaxy had been completely disrupted by the discovery of an established major power in what they had considered open territory. Admiral Chen, General Thraktar replied formally. The Krillian Empire acknowledges the territorial claims of the Terran Federation and desires to establish formal diplomatic relations to prevent future misunderstandings. However, we require clarification about the extent of human territorial claims and defensive commitments. The negotiations have been ongoing for weeks, with representatives from all the major galactic powers trying to understand the new strategic reality. Humanity's revelation had triggered a cascade of diplomatic and military reassessments that would reshape interstellar politics for generations. Admiral Chun activated a holographic display that showed detailed star charts of human territory. Ziwa was astounded to see the scope of human expansion. They controlled over 1,200 star systems, with established colonies, industrial centers, and defensive installations throughout a region that encompassed nearly a quarter of the local galactic spiral arm. The Terran Federation currently administers 1,237 star systems, Admiral Chun announced to the assembled diplomats. We have formal defense agreements with an additional 400 systems occupied by non-human species who have requested our protection. We consider all of these worlds to be under our direct protection. The implications were staggering. Humanity didn't just control territory comparable to the major galactic empires. They had created a defensive alliance that extended their influence far beyond their own colonies. The galaxy's careful balance of power had been completely disrupted by the emergence of this new factor. Ambassador Veltar of the Theshan Confederacy leaned forward with obvious concern. The Thessians were known for their diplomatic skills and strategic thinking, and their representative was clearly struggling to process the new information. Admiral, Ambassador Veltar said carefully, "You described defense agreements with 400 star systems. What is the nature of these relationships? Are these conquered territories, client states, or willing allies?" Admiral Chen's expression became slightly warmer as she addressed what was obviously a topic of importance to her. "Ambassador, humanity's approach to interstellar relations is based on voluntary cooperation and mutual benefit. We offer protection, technology, and trade opportunities to species that request our assistance. In return, they contribute to our collective defense and participate in our expanded civilization." She activated additional displays showing some of the non-human species that had joined the human sphere of influence. Zwiaxthala recognized several of them as minor civilizations that the major powers had generally ignored as being too small or primitive to matter. "Many of these species approached us after learning about human defensive capabilities," Admiral Chen continued. "They had experienced raids by mercenary companies or pressure from expansionist powers. We offered them an alternative to conquest or exploitation." General Thraktar's mandibles clicked together in what Zwiaxthala recognized as the Krillian expression of deep concern. The Krillian Empire's expansion strategy was based on identifying weak civilizations and either conquering them directly or forcing them to accept Krillian protection in exchange for tribute. If humanity was offering superior protection without the exploitative terms the Krillians demanded, it represented a fundamental challenge to their entire imperial model. "This represents a significant shift in galactic power dynamics," General Thraktar observed. "The traditional balance between the major powers assumed that minor civilizations would eventually be absorbed by one of the established empires. Your approach creates an alternative that could undermine the existing order." Admiral Chen nodded thoughtfully. "General, that's not our intention, but it may be an inevitable consequence. Humanity believes that voluntary cooperation produces better results than forced submission. Our alliance members contribute more to collective defense and development because they have a stake in the system's success." Ambassador Veltar activated his own holographic display, showing traditional Thessian territorial claims and trade routes. Many of them passed through what was now revealed to be human-controlled space. "Admiral, this creates immediate practical problems for existing interstellar commerce and territorial administration. The Thessian trade routes to the Outer Rim pass through systems you claim as human territory. How do you propose to address these conflicts?" Admiral Chun had obviously anticipated this question. "Ambassador, we have no desire to disrupt existing trade relationships or territorial arrangements where they don't conflict with our security interests. We're prepared to negotiate transit agreements, trade partnerships, and boundary adjustments that serve everyone's interests." She paused and looked around the conference table at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. "However, we will not compromise on certain fundamental principles. We will not tolerate the exploitation of weaker species. We will not accept forced tribute or conquest in our sphere of influence. And we will defend our allies against aggression regardless of the source." The conference room fell silent as the diplomats absorbed the implications of her statement. Humanity was essentially announcing that they would challenge the traditional imperial model of galactic expansion, offering weaker species an alternative to conquest while backing that offer with military capabilities that exceeded anything the established powers possessed. Zwiaxthala found herself in the strange position of being asked to testify about human military capabilities to an audience that included some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Her testimony over the past months had shaped how every major civilization understood the human threat, and her analysis continued to influence diplomatic and strategic decisions. "Commander Textala," Ambassador Veltar addressed her directly. "Based on your encounter with human forces, what is your assessment of their military doctrine and strategic objectives?" Zwiaxthala considered her words carefully. Her answer would influence how these civilizations approach humanity for decades to come. Ambassador, she replied, humanity demonstrates the military capabilities of a mature civilization that has learned from observing galactic conflicts for decades. Their technology is clearly advanced beyond current galactic standards, and their tactics suggest extensive study of how other powers conduct military operations. However, their behavior during our encounter indicated strategic restraint and preference for diplomatic solutions. She activated her own display, showing the tactical analysis of her encounter with human forces. They could have destroyed my entire fleet easily, but chose instead to disable our ships and offer terms for withdrawal. This suggests a civilization that prefers to demonstrate capability rather than inflict unnecessary casualties. General Thraktar leaned forward with obvious interest. Commander, do you believe human military capabilities exceed those of the combined major powers? It was a question that had been troubling military planners throughout the galaxy. If humanity could defeat any individual empire, could they defeat all of them working together? Zwiexthala glanced at Admiral Chun, who was listening to her testimony with polite attention, but no apparent concern. The human officer's confidence suggested that she wasn't worried about facing a coalition of galactic powers. Sir, Zwiexthala replied carefully, humanity demonstrated technological superiority that would give them significant advantages in any conflict. However, they also demonstrated the organizational sophistication and strategic planning of a civilization that has been preparing for galactic contact for decades. I believe they are confident in their ability to defend their interests regardless of the opposition they face. The negotiations continued for several more hours, covering territorial boundaries, trade agreements, and military cooperation protocols. What emerged was a new framework for galactic civilization that acknowledged humanity as a peer power while establishing mechanisms for peaceful coexistence and conflict resolution. As the formal session concluded, Admiral Chun approached Zwiexthala privately. Commander, I wanted to speak with you about your future plans. Your role in preventing a larger conflict has not gone unnoticed by human leadership. Zwiexthala was curious about what the Admiral might be suggesting. Her mercenary company had been effectively disbanded after word of their defeat spread through mercenary networks. Her reputation for invincibility was gone, but it had been replaced by something potentially more valuable: expertise in human capabilities and strategic thinking. Admiral, she replied, I'm no longer certain what my future holds. The mercenary profession has changed significantly since our encounter. Many companies are refusing contracts that might bring them into conflict with human interests. Admiral Chin smiled, the first time Zwiexthala had seen such an expression from her. Commander, humanity is still learning about galactic civilization, and we need advisors who understand how other species think and operate. Your analysis of our encounter has been valuable to human strategic planning, and we believe your expertise could be useful in preventing future conflicts. The offer was unprecedented. Zwiexthala had spent her career as an adversary of organized civilization, working for whoever paid the highest fees to attack whoever they designated as enemies. Now she was being offered the opportunity to work for one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy to prevent the conflicts she had previously profited from. What will my role be, she asked. Cultural advisor and strategic analyst, Admiral Chin replied. Help us understand how other species approach military and diplomatic problems. Advise us on how to communicate our capabilities and intentions without triggering unnecessary conflicts. Essentially, help us avoid the misunderstandings that lead to wars. Zwiexthala considered the offer carefully. It represented a complete transformation of her career and identity, from destroyer to protector, from mercenary to diplomat. But it also offered the opportunity to be part of something historically significant: the emergence of humanity as a major galactic power and the reshaping of interstellar civilization. Admiral, she said finally, I accept your offer. Perhaps it's time for me to help prevent conflicts rather than profit from them. As Zwiexthala left the conference station, she reflected on how dramatically her life had changed since that day she had received what seemed like a routine extermination contract. Her failed attack on a human world had revealed the existence of a new major power, triggered the most important diplomatic negotiations in galactic history, and transformed her from mercenary commander to a cultural advisor working to prevent interstellar wars. Looking out at the stars through the station's observation windows, she realized that the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had emerged from their self-imposed isolation, bringing with them technology and ideas that would reshape how civilizations interacted with each other. The age of simple conquest and exploitation was ending, replaced by something more complex and potentially more promising. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity had known for centuries, that cooperation and mutual protection could achieve more than domination and fear. And HFY would be there to help that lesson spread throughout the stars, ensuring that other mercenary commanders would never make the mistake she had made when she underestimated a species that had learned to survive by working together rather than conquering others. In the end, her greatest failure had become her greatest success, and the galaxy was better for it.